live, 4/13, 2024. 5 years from today, as prophesied by NASA, Apophis 42999, I believe, is going to kill planet Earth. And that'll be a Friday the 13th in 2029. Again, Apophis, the god of darkness, also worshipped by NASA. I believe they had some ceremony on the eclipse in honor of the god of chaos and darkness, the opposite of Ra and the sun. Yep, your elite secretly worship basically the entity they embody in various ways. Darth Vader, the Terminator. They worship the dark side. We're joined by Matt X, Watchdog, Reverse History, Armin Ree, Conspire Act, Ted Stryker, and Lord Laney. I saw a number of you in the live stream last night. I was working on the Cyborg Penguin. I went out looking for parts. I took like a 3-mile walk, and I happened to find on the bike trail a USB tail light with various modes of blinking, lights, signaling. It's perfect. And so I installed it on the front, and then we have the telescopic lenses built into the helmet. And I think I added on to the fin, the metal exterior. All right, joined by Linda Curtis at YouTube. Okay, we're waiting for people to show up. We have about 8 platforms on. But let's go ahead and get started with the main topic. The government's trying to downplay this according to Matt Wallace, but Israel has as many as 400 nuclear weapons, and it's stated they will use them if they feel an existential threat. So I watched this video. He's driving while warning us about nukes. And I'm looking at this guy thinking, wait a minute here. He's trying to cosplay or pretend LARP, like he's in Leave the World Behind. This can't be real. He can't be that freaked out. And he has his 2 babies in the back seat. It's like, wait, you have your children, your babies in car seats. You're driving while live streaming. You're maintaining eye contact with me, not the road. So his children are in danger, not from nukes, but from his crazy ranting and his driving. So here he is, just totally distracted, ranting again about how we're on the brink of chaos. And imagine my surprise when at the very end, he's pitching for Heaven's Harvest, storable food items.
A shortage of water, and if you don't have anything prepared, you could lose your life when you don't have to. It's not worth it, and so that's why I'm putting this in here. I don't normally like to include links and stuff like this in videos like this because of the seriousness of them, but in this case,
he's driving like 100 miles per hour with his babies, and he's ranting about we're on the brink of chaos. Go to heavensharvest.com/Matt so he gets his cut.
It's urgent that you need to go and stock up. I do have a partnership with a company called Heaven's Harvest. They have the best quality food. I've already bought a lot from.
Well, what good is that food going to do you when they've destroyed the infrastructure and we've resorted to cannibalism? In fact, there's a pretty good book I don't want to recommend. It's called Contingency Cannibalism. It's like something like super hardcore survival tactics. Let me see if I can pull this up. I read this a while ago, and then I let someone at work borrow it, and hopefully they didn't put it to use. The person was a little school shooter-ish. Yeah, super hardcore survivalism. Contingency cannibalism, last resort survival option. And one of the points that he made, and I think all truthers need to hear this, is that if you store up on a lot of stuff and anybody knows, guess whose house the mobs are going to go to? They're going to go where their food is, whether it's Walmart or your bunker that you weren't too secretive about. So if you really do have a bug away, a bug out bag and a bunker to run to, you should make sure that nobody knows about it because your friends will turn on you when they shut everything off. Conspire Act says lots of inside baseball last night, very enlightening. Yeah, we had a rambling conversation, but a lot of people were asking about people, old friends like Flat Earth Reset, and how we're going to send a pride parade to his front door since he misgendered Patty Steer till she left the internet. I mean, somebody needs to answer for that. And yes, I do have other issues with that individual, but I decided I'm not going to take him to court. I'm just going to create some content with his assistance, wittingly or not. I mean, I think he owes us an explanation. Plus, he owes an explanation for his intentionally destructive lies at the very beginning of this channel, where he was reaching out to people who are supporters of this channel and spreading malicious lies, and I never understood why. Like, was he paid for this? We shall see. Echo Charlie says we need a fallout shelter. We have fallout shelters downtown. Every building here has fallout shelters. So this is just old school mind control, and they're bringing it back. Duck and cover. Well, you know what? They're probably going to phase out school shooters after they take the guns, and they're going to bring in duck and cover because they're going to bring back the whole nuke thing. And they're making it real with the movies, real in the hyperstitious way. And it's working. I believe it's going to work. This guy here is already pitching survivalism and getting prepared for the end to millions of people. And they're not talking about laboratories in China anymore. They're not talking about stale bat soup. No, they're talking about nukes. That's pretty much it. So, do we need a fallout shelter? Well, not necessarily, but the thing is, and I think there's a preview of what's to come in the Humanity Bureau, a movie with Nick Cage that came out pre-pandemic, and it was about a society locked down because we had a big world-ending nuclear catastrophe, mutual assured destruction, and it turns out that Geiger counters were contraband. You were not allowed to test to see if it was safe to go outdoors. You had to wait for the authorities to tell you. And of course, what the authorities didn't tell you is there was no contamination. I mean, totally unrealistic. They could never pull something like that off, but just suggesting maybe that movie might have some hints. Let's see here. Moving on. Linda Curtis says, get your male vitality. Truther's going to need them. Well, it's interesting that they're selling super male vitality and this whole run for the hills scenario, to the right, because the right is obsessed with running out of babies, running out of people. Like, oh, we're running out of people. They're depopulating us. Elon Musk, we have a population crisis. We're running out. And then Tucker Carlson gives some interview. He's talking to somebody the other day, and he's like, my greatest accomplishment is having a bunch of kids, and I want people to have kids and have a bunch of kids. And I'm hearing this as like a repeated theme, but it's specifically on the right, and that's all by design. Because you'll notice they've associated the alt media, the right, and conspiracy theories with, quote, toxic masculinity, guns, super male vitality, and the whole alt right attitude towards women, the MAGA ban. None of it's organic. Joined by James Osman, finally made it. Thank you for joining. And phones are open, by the way, if you have anything to add to this. Armin Reese says, the world is ending. By the way, I have some salted neighbor ass cans to sell you. Oh, Alex Jones, yeah. 6 weeks into the pandemic, when we're getting stimmy checks, we're getting fat, we're watching Netflix, we're gaining the COVID-19 pounds, he's like, I'm ready to eat my neighbors. It's like, what do you mean? If anybody has storable food, it's you. You should be the last person to be resorting to cannibalism. But no, he's getting ahead of us by a couple of years, by 4 years. Somebody ought to check his freezers. When somebody says something shady, you're like, somebody needs to check that guy's browser history. Search his computers. Like Ollie Alexander or Nick Fuentes, like somebody needs to check their hard drives. With Jones, it's like somebody needs to check his freezers. Take some of his jerky and have it sampled at a lab and make sure that it's indeed, you know, cattle. Alex Dahmer, says Linda Curtis. Yeah, I like that. He strikes me more of a Gacy type, you know, like Alex Wayne Gacy. But anyway, let's get away from cannibalism for a minute. Although there has been a lot of, I mean, cannibalism is kind of hot right now. You have barbecue out there in Haiti, and they're even doing rap videos bragging about raping and cannibalizing and killing people. And it turns out though, and the right-wing media that reported on Haitian cannibals, they missed this. The gangs are running psyops against each other to convince one another that they're cannibals, but there's no evidence that there's actual cannibalism there. If you want cannibalism, you got to look to Los Angeles, where the guy gets run over by a train and a homeless person comes up and grabs a leg and starts eating it raw. I mean, who eats raw meat like that? Aside from Jake the a-hole. I mean, you'd think you would want to cook it first, but raw meat's a thing too. The raw meat diet was one of these truther fads. I don't know if it's still going on. I mean, can you go to Burger King and say don't cook it? Can you order it? It's just strange, these diet fads. In the ear in Ukraine, no, in Russia at the Crocus thing, they made the terrorist eat his own ear. And then you have the 33-year-old Russian satanic cannibal who was eating teenagers set loose in Ukraine. So yeah, there's a bit of this going around. G says the world has been endlessly ending. Yes. Okay. Now the reason why they continually hype and this is the end, it's coming, the end times, is to reduce your frame of reference. They want you in the now. They want you a short-term thinker. They don't want you thinking long-term or noticing patterns. The reason we notice patterns is that we're not stuck in the now. We're looking back at past precedent. A great predictor of future behavior is relevant past behavior. And the media has been a pathological liar as long as any of us have been watching it. So it's reasonable to assume that it's going to continue. And it does. And what they continually do is they say, the world's ending, to keep you in a defensive posture, to keep you spending, to keep you insecure. I've unplugged from that. The world's ended too many times. In fact, pat yourself on the back if you're alive because you survived the end of the world 12/21/2020. That was the real end of that age. Going by the occult elite and their great reset, which is a cover for something much deeper. Joined by Howard Boyd, new wrench holder, and we have a lot of members now. I want to say thanks to those who have been joining the IPS channel, and we're going to do more and more video as we increase the number of members. YouTube safe content, like turning plush penguins into animatronic cyborgs, AI assistants, etc. All right, let's move on. We were talking about Matt Wallace. Okay, next subject here I want to get to. Since O.J. Simpson just passed at the age of 76, supposedly. I mean, when these celebrities die, their world stage character ends. There's not necessarily any reason to think it's unlikely or out of the ordinary for someone his age, whatever, but you're also looking at world stage psyop actors, and they don't usually have the normal kind of exits we do. I'm not sure what happens. I mean, do they move to some island? I can imagine Epstein Island. The truth of it is, you got Derek Chauvin hanging out with George Floyd, hanging out with a bunch of grown up Sandy Hook kids, and they're all just having a big party, laughing at us. Like that movie Utopia with John Cusack. Utopia, you had this island where all the actors lived, and then they would be brought in to run psyops on the masses. The Utopians. And we do have two competing visions of utopia. We have the progressive future utopianism, and we know where that's going. And then you have the MAGA, the Make America Great Again, the looking back, the idealized past they want to bring back. That's why you have all this talk about Arizona and the abortion laws taking us back to like 18 something. This is all just, mostly rhetoric. Yeah, here we go. Arizona Supreme Court upholds 1864 law banning most abortions. Why do you think they're reaching back? On both sides, they're making the point here that, or rather, the right specifically is making the point that they are trying to make America great again before all these changes. And the left is saying they want to bring us back when things were terrible. So it's a matter of debate or something. Belief system versus belief system. Armin Rees says if they wanted the world to end, why would they vie to control society? They would just need to let go of control together and watch the forces they created clash freely and uncontrollably. Now, in Leave the World Behind, that's the story. The story is they turn everyone against everyone, and then they pull the plug, and they let society clean itself up, which is very Machiavellian, and it makes a lot of sense. And I'm not a reality denialist. I was looking over some stuff today, some images from Rwanda anniversary of the genocide. I'm looking at these scarred up faces, and it's just really interesting and amazing to think about how spellbound we are, and how if they broke that spell, would it necessarily be a good thing? The whole premise of the rule of the masses through terrorism, through religious mythology, fear of the gods, has been that the masses are unruly and fickle. and need to be restrained. So we could look at this as an operation to suppress our worst instincts from overriding. It could be. I'm not saying it's a benevolent presence, but maybe in a way it sort of is. Not quite sure actually. We can talk about it. Is the demiurge on our side, or the meta scripters writing the script, bending and steering society according to this prefabricated history? Could it really be in our best interests? I kind of have my doubts. But then again, we're looking at a reality where people are pretty brutal to one another. I consistently see stuff that I find shocking on the real side of things. The psyops are always underwhelming. If I was writing psyops for the psyop entertainment complex, I would take inspiration from reality. I wouldn't make stuff up that just mimics the movies. I say psyops imitate, basically psyops imitate the art, and art imitates life. It's a feedback loop. James Osman says, your shadow ban may be over. YouTube put a 4-year-old IPS show on my feed. Almost every caller and comment were bears. The good old days. Yeah, Owen Benjamin has been demonetized again. He was driven off YouTube, and he went into his own thing called, I think it's called unauthorized TV or something, and their payment processor was somehow pulled. Like, he has been definitely, in some ways, marginalized, and he's kind of off the grid. I haven't kept up with his work lately. Echo Charlie says, I've been drinking a lot of orange juice. I watch Old World Florida, and now OJ's back in the news. Well, okay, OJ Simpson, let's get into this. Because there's been this conjecture for some time that Nicole Simpson didn't die, but that she played her role in a psyop and was rewarded with a new position as Megyn Kelly. And when you look at the pictures of Megyn Kelly next to Nicole Simpson, and you look at the entire breakdown, and I believe this was started by Dallas Goldbug. The story is fascinating in the sense that the entire thing is clearly a psyop. There's no reason to think it's real, unless you know something we don't. This is some made for court TV stuff. Definitely Cywar. But is Nicole Simpson alive as Megyn Kelly? First of all, I want to say, whether or not, it doesn't change the fact that the thing was a psyop. It's immaterial. This is just a bit of conspiratainment candy on top, if it's true. But I think it's a little suspicious that every time I look at Megyn Kelly, she's always like, yeah, these internet weirdos think I'm Nicole Simpson. This is like the fifth time
and lab origin or
this is like the fifth time I've heard her try to debunk this. It's like Alex Jones and Bill Hicks. He's always talking about how he's not Bill Hicks, but he's also been accused or suspected of being was it the comedian Sam? Is it Kinison? My point is, it's like they focus on these. Yeah, Sam Kinison. Sam Kinison is another potential Alex Jones, which I find it hard to believe, although he died in 1992. Possible. I don't think so. But again, Jones only focuses on Bill Hicks. Well, here at Megyn Kelly, she's really fixated on this. So let me go and play about 30 seconds.
origin of the virus, or people who take ivermectin or
Now, I think this is the guy, I think he was Greg in the Brady Bunch. Is that who this? Oh, it's Adam Carolla.
hydroxychloroquine, then you'll get lumped into the lizard person, flat earther group, which would be pretty effective if you were trying to throw a little mud and tarnish the reputation of somebody who believed in something that was real, like origins of COVID, and then smear them. So there is something sort of diabolical about it.
So he's talking about, of course, the smearing of, or the merging of, criticism of the medical establishment with just random conspiracy theories. But here's where she gets into herself being the center of a conspiracy.
I feel your pain. I'm mistaken for Greg Brady of the Brady Bunch quite a bit. And there's a lot of theories online as to whether there's two of us or just me. And then why would I go into media? But let's not make
we
this
need a split
about,
screen of that. We're going to work on that.
please.
Yeah, I don't, it's very, I mean, I'll give you some of, let's see. I mean, this is just from yesterday, but these pop up in my timeline.
Now, here she is. She's going through her Twitter feed because all day long, people are tweeting Megyn Kelly suggesting she's Nicole Simpson. And I posited this could be true. And my question was, were they really in love? Like O.J. Simpson and Megyn Kelly. Like, are they secretly in love and married? And was O.J. maybe not even in jail or prison, but living in her basement? We had a few theories to try to explain how this could all work out, but let me play this clip.
The time. Nicole Brown Simpson versus Megyn Kelly. Hollywood recycles dead actors. Why does Nicole Brown Simpson look exactly like Megyn Kelly? I don't think we look exactly alike at all. She had brown eyes. I have blue eyes. There's a lot of differences between us. There's a vague resemblance.
Now, when we say there's a lot of differences, I have to reference back to Jonah Mendez, director of disguise at the CIA for 27 years, who said, when you're altering someone's character, you look at a list of attributes and then you flip them. Blue eyes, go brown. Tall, make them short. Long hair, short hair. You flip a lot of things. You change a lot of things on purpose. So the fact that there are differences doesn't exactly rule it out. We're looking at similarities first. And of course, we're looking at the bigger picture. But here she is trying to debunk it.
Is Megyn Kelly, Nicole Brown Simpson, and on and on. I am going to put on this video some pictures of the young Megyn Kelly in Syracuse, New York, where I grew up.
Now, as you can see here, Adam Carolla mentioned how people confuse him with Greg from the Brady Bunch. And she just happened to segue into this. Sure, it's a good kind of a, I think, way to bring this up, but she just happens to have the pictures as well. So she was planning this. She was planning to bring this up because O.J. Simpson just died, and she needed to get ahead of this.
I was born in Illinois, moved to Illinois. I have a long or
Okay, this is too funny. Salty Siren says, looks like a boy is a child. Linda Curtis says the transvestigators think she's a guy. Yeah, it gets to that. That's one step too deep. Like, let's just focus on one thing first. Let's establish that this is the same person, and then we'll go deeper if need be. But I think that at this point, she just seems a little desperate to cover something up.
moved to Syracuse. I have a long history of being alive in my own skin under my own name, people. You gotta let it go.
I don't know. Those looked AI to me. Count the fingers on those childhood pictures because those look like AI, Jen. They probably had 6 toes. There's always giveaways. Like, there was this picture of Snoop Dogg going around in a tutu, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's a humiliation ritual," and I'm like, he's got like 15 fingers on one hand. Like, that's not even a real photo. Angst G says OJ's first movie, one of his first, was Oh, yeah, that's right, Capricorn 1. And then you have the whole, that was about faking the news, the moon landing, faking the moon landing. He was also part of, what, 33 and a third? A lot of 33s around this guy. I think he even got sentenced to 33 years. Mom with Son says she protests too much. Salty says she has 6 toes, though, and Angst G says hooves. Yeah, no one's really thought about that. We checked out their feet. Maybe it's hooves. The T-vestigators are just misdirected. Copacetic says she grew up in Syracuse, New York, and OJ played for the Buffalo Bills. Nice connection. You see, that's what I'm wondering here. That's exactly what that's when I say this person is this person, or possibly. I'm not just looking at surface level characteristics. I'm looking at the big picture, the life story. Does it overlap? Is it part of this? Does it fit in with the general pattern of things? As the general pattern of someone is repackaged and put back onto the world stage. And I would argue that Megyn Kelly's position at Fox had to have been some kind of reward, some kind of perk, like, hey, look, you did this really good thing. You really helped us establish these narratives, and now you get to be part of Fox where you can maintain the race war that you helped start. That's kind of what I figured her purpose was here. Basically throwing accelerant on the flames of these various political footballs. Anyway, that's a video from Megyn Kelly. Bizarre pro O.J. Simpson spin with Adam Carolla. All right, let's move on here. We talked about how Israel has 400 nukes. Now, those nukes are fake. But if you don't think they are, you can go to heavensharvest.com/Matt, and this guy who's speeding down the highway with his children in the back seat, ranting into his camera lens there, he will get a cut of the money that you send for these food items that you'll probably never have to eat unless all hell breaks loose. Cynthia says, "What does Adam Carolla know about anything anyway? Why is he even there? He should be making crude content about chicks with big boobs or something." Yeah, he was one of these. There's a lot of these characters like that. But yeah, you're right about that. How did he get to be any kind of a commenter? It's because he's a fixture on the right. You'll find some of these right wing comedian types will take the anti position, and then suddenly they're influencers. And the anti position is in his case, it has to do with probably ivermectin or something like that. But yeah, there's this pattern of the right wing manosphere comedians picking up these various anti positions when it comes to any of these major issues. Controlled opposition. All right, let's move on here. I want to go through my notes. A lot of stuff has been happening lately. I want to catch up on. Uh, Hell may break loose, according to Trump. He threatens, and this is his reaction to the pending trial. He says, the price of truth, 72 hours until all hell breaks loose. Former President Trump fired a warning shot Friday morning. 72 hours till hell breaks loose. So this has to do with his testimony on Monday, where he's going to be out to talk about the hush money that's being paid to Stormy Daniels. This is like a recycled event from last year, but last year it was all about the storm is coming, Q drop number 55, 55th anniversary of MLK's assassination. Trump is in front of the courthouse, and the Stormy Daniels story was really making headlines at that point. And so the QAnons were like, oh, the storm is coming. The 55th Q drop is about the first arrest will shock the world. So it was supposed to precede some big thing, and it didn't happen. But maybe this time, maybe all hell will break loose tomorrow. I'll keep an eye out. Israel media reports suggest that if Iran targets strategic facilities in Israel, Jerusalem will retaliate with an exceptional response, electromagnetic attacks. An electromagnetic bomb has never been used before. Its effects are known. It does not harm humans and creates a large EMP, electromagnetic pulse, destroying all electronic systems. So they can do an EMP without a nuke. Experts say that an Israeli EMP strike on Iran will bring it to the Stone Age. Fascinating. Okay, this is sort of tying into something else that I had been looking into, because I noticed there's a couple of movies out that I want to check them out just for their predictive programming value. One of them is the Godzilla X Kong New Empire, the other being Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. My thinking is Frozen Empire could refer to a nuclear winter or something following an EMP. But both of these movies make a prominent use of EMP or Empire. EMP Empire. It's just really prominent on their screens, and Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. So there's some kind of a connection here. The EMP thing has been standing out. Godzilla-sized Barbie steps out of a billboard. A number of people have been noting these connections between these characters, Barbie and Godzilla, Barbie and Oppenheimer. Now listen to this. Pink is the highest form of power on the electromagnetic spectrum. So in the Barbie movie, I'm sorry, in the Godzilla movie, apparently he turns pink. Now, if you recall, and I talked about this last year, the significance is this. In the symbolism, Babylon and the beast is red, or sorry, the beast is symbolized, let's say, like Christ and Magdalene, Babylon and the beast. It's this duality they create, like Isis and Osiris, but they assign colors to them. So the red is associated with the goddess, the white associated with the god, like wine and bread, for example. On the Templar cross, you have the red cross on the white. And this is, again, it's Babylon and the beast. The Babylon, the red, the scarlet woman. And so Barbie is the archetype here of the whore of Babylon. And then Oppenheimer comes out, and they combine these two. And Oppenheimer, again, associated with the bomb, Godzilla, metaphor for the bomb, that's the beast from the sea. There's all kinds of connections here to relate the two. But the pink is what you get when you mix the red and the white. And in the tarot card, the Whore of Babylon holds the Holy Grail, and inside is a pink fluid, and that's of course to symbolize the union of Babylon and the beast. So then scroll forward a couple months after that Barbieheimer thing trends, and you have Maui. On 8/8, the Lionsgate Day, you have the portal that opens up or something, and this has been connected to Maui being hit by space lasers or climate change, but Maui burns. After Maui burns, and this is all happening during the hype of Godzilla, so it's like this has got to be some kind of a media tie-in because you have the islands, Bikini Island, the nuke tests, Godzilla, and then this place gets this mysterious catastrophe, and a lot of people did suspect it was space lasers or something. And a lot of truthers thought there were 1,500 missing children. But my point of it is, and you all recall the Mountain Dew, like direct energy weapon, Maui blast. But after the fires, they began spraying pink soil tackifier over the affected areas. In other words, the areas where it got burned, it is now pink. Here we go. Material to be applied to Maui burn zone, a biodegradable, non-toxic material, which will turn pink. And this will prevent toxic substances from the burn area from running off into the water. Sprayed with pink goo. Now again, this is all just kind of reiterated by this movie I haven't even seen yet, but the new Empire, the pink, there's something there. Catch up on your comments some more. Now the EMP thing would also be perfectly consistent with the blackout agenda, and they wouldn't have to fake nukes. They wouldn't have to do anything. They would just have to turn off the lights and say this is what happened. Isabel Ann says, hey, Penguins was in the totality portal. Best burger I ever ate. In all seriousness, the eclipse was incredible, and day to night was a trip. Yeah, absolutely. I was watching it as well, and despite all the prophecies not coming true, it was still a remarkable event. I was hoping the moon would fall. Skyfish says he started on Croc's Loveliness with Dr. Drew back in the 80s. Yeah, they were like on the radio. You're talking about Adam Carolla and just being kind of pervs. Adoria the Explorer says, yep, Carolla plays right-wing literal puppet on crank yankers called Bircham. Oh, fascinating. Well, they get recruited. You know, I'm noticing that comedians, like people in Normieville, you know, people wake up, they start noticing things, and they leave Normieville. And comedians are often people who figured out that Normieville is bullshit. And if they lean left, they go woke. And now they're woke comedians. If they lean right, they lean towards that kind of humor, right-wing Trutherville level humor, which has now been infused with a heavy dose of exceedingly what you would consider to be toxic masculinity, incel type. But the thing is, it's mirrored by the left, which is Barbie feminism. There are no funny comedians in the political horseshoe. I really don't think so. Like, to me, I don't really find, I mean, yeah, they're funny people, sure. Observational humor, sure. But I just see government jesters left and right. These talk show hosts at night, Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, these guys, they're all interchangeable government jesters. And the audience with the canned laughter, none of it seems real to me. And now, one of the reasons why you have EMP being discussed and why you have all this stuff in the movies right now, you got Fallout, Oppenheimer. It's not just that it's a trend, it's selling, that there's a consumer demand. It's not that at all. The entertainment is a side effect of the propaganda. The masses are being educated about electromagnetic pulse. So when something happens, they respond appropriately. If they didn't have a couple years of predictive programming buildup and they shut the lights off, there wouldn't be a cohesive response. They don't want you to have any questions. They want you to know the answers. Echo Charlie says Blade Runner 2049, all digital libraries got cooked. Now that's interesting. Blade Runner 2049. I'll have to watch it. The original is iconic. The Cybertruck came out of it. Did you know that the Cybertruck emerges in Los Angeles in November of 2019? And Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner, was set in November of 2019. It was set in the future, of course. But yes, the Blade Runner truck coming out at the same time. Blade Runner Day. Fans shocked to discover film is. Here it is. Here it is. How did it predict 2019's tech? Anyway, people are always shocked. How do they predict it? Yeah, because all of our science fiction writers, the great science fiction writers, they're all prophets. Echo Charlie says Israel on high alert, no school trips, no crowds. Yeah, they have to get everybody in front of their screens so that whenever they update the script, everyone gets the updates. Joined by Barth Northeast. Thank you for joining. Infinite Planes Saturnday, open phones for anything, really, anything you want to talk about. This platform is kind of open for that. We're mostly reviewing last week. Isabel Ann says red blood and white fluids equal pink. Yeah, that's it. I mean, look, the Barbie movie is about the horror of Babylon. It's about the Babylon working. It's literally about the advent of the new thelemic age. The sexual revolution cannot be separated from the mainstreaming of Thelema, Aleister Crowley, and strangely NASA. These things are connected. And it makes sense when you understand the concept of syncretism, how the New World Order isn't coming. It's the Old World Order updating its symbolism for a new scientific age. That's all. The space age. They're changing the sets. The priests are changing their costumes and calling themselves something different now. Like the high priests, the elevated ones, the real high priests are now astronauts, and they have the God's eye view. On the ground, they're just scientists. You have your pastors who are now just media pundits, but they've updated the entire system, top to bottom. Barth Northeast says the bridge collapse looks like the one in Blade Runner. Yeah, I'll have to look at that then. Because the bridge collapse, the cranes falling, the planes falling, the train derailments, all this stuff is scripted news. All this stuff was written by the newsbenders years in advance. Predictive programming is predictable. It's not a mystery. Although there's a lot of discussion now that I think and I'm trying to bring this conversation up, and I think we're kind of ginning it up here. There's a lot of discussion, who is behind predictive programming? Gremlins? AI? Higher power? Are the metascriptors, the directors and the writers, are they tapping into something, quote, higher? Or is there a more mundane explanation? And I think it's about time that we've had this debate and this conversation because as long as we look to non-explanations as answers, false explanations, it kind of stultifies our eventual arrival at the truth on a matter because it stops the curiosity. It says, oh, no need to ask questions here. No need to peek behind this curtain. And I'm suggesting we haven't gone deep enough. And we are going really deep into the nuance here to where we're consistently unraveling these threads and showing how these news events are indeed integrated with the entertainment. It's contiguous. There is no separation, but the minds of the mediated, the media consumers, they are so compartmentalized that they see these things as entirely separate. They're like, oh, look, this train derailment and toxic airborne event is just like the movie from Netflix last night. What a coincidence. Every day, it's another coincidence. It's like, okay, there are coincidences, but there are also meaningful coincidences, and then like synchronicities, and then there are things that look like coincidences as long as you cannot determine how it was caused, and you just have to ascribe it to happenstance. Oh, it's just happenstance, random, the universe. Like, remember in the Truman Show? He's driving around and he's like, hey, I just saw that person cross the street at the same time yesterday. Drive around the block. And then the same guy crosses. He starts noticing patterns and a continuity. It's like, wait a minute here. Are these coincidences or is this reality staged to a large degree? And when I say that, I don't mean that we're all living in a literal Truman Show, but that the construct we're living in, our internal concept, is, for all intents and purposes, a Truman Show. And I don't think it's a coincidence that there's a connection between the name Truman, President Truman, and the atom bomb. Because I think the advent of the atom bomb is when the show really began. That's when we were all in extreme. This is like going back before any of us likely were born, or most of us came after this. But when they brought that out and they made it real, I think that's when they introduced the world stage as a movie, as a inescapable condition of life on Earth. Like you cannot escape it. There is no unprogrammed mind. We're all on their game board. And the parameters of the game board are defined by the programmers who said, well, the people at the top of each of these governments have this much power and they can all press this button and this would happen. And so now we're in this like a circular firing squad, this collective hostage situation. And we're all being held hostage because if something goes wrong, someone pushes that button, we're all dead. You see what they did? They've replaced the old gods and superstitions with new ones. The atom bomb, for all intents and purposes, is a god. It's an angry war god, and you can choose to believe in this punishing god or not. But most people do, and they're frightened accordingly, and they propagate it. They appease its controllers or those who can mitigate it. It basically turns all these various conditions, Gaia, Gaia, you have this storm god that's going to flood us if we don't change our behaviors. It turns people into sheeple who are cowering before the priests who tell them, well, if you give us this much money per year, we can stave off Gaia's wrath. Or if we all just do this, if we all agree, and it's always about all, then we can somehow arrive at some kind of unifying solution. It's all Hegelian dialectics. I was mentioning this the other day about the aliens. The aliens are called grays, and it's because grays represent the achievement of every one of their dialectics, the thesis, antithesis being synthesized into their solutions, black and white into gray. And the alien invasion thing has been politicized. Left wants the aliens, right thinks they're demons. But I think ultimately the aliens are a metaphor for something else, for mankind perfected, mankind unified. And that's how the left sees them, like angels. Angels are like man minus the ape. Like man is caught somewhere between ape and angel, and he's trying to evolve more towards that. And the aliens are seen by many as humans perfected, man at some future state having risen above all these things that we needed to survive terrestrial existence on Earth, including rising above our various distinctions, because the grays don't have distinctions. They're all one. There's no races, there's no genders, there's no identity. It's just they're all kind of the same. And the oneness is the thing, because I think that this is a metaphor. We're not all going to turn to grays. What I mean is the metaphor is the oneness. When you get rid of borders, now the aliens can arrive. Illegal alien invasion has been this terror of the right, and the whole concept of the one world order is dissolution of national boundaries. So I think that this love affair the left has with aliens and with immigration and borderless societies is connected. It's conditioning us to embrace the alien. And the alien invasion, again, metaphor, but you'll see how it also pertains, and it's divided along the same political schism, to the syringe agenda. Got to watch my language. And will you accept the invasion, the injection? Will you accept the blood contamination? The blood purity is a huge part of this psyop, whether it's racial nationalism or anti-vax. It's part of this the insecurity psyop, heightening the insecurity on the right about their borders and the integrity of their purity. And so the destruction of national identity is a huge theme with the right in particular, because they're again moving us into this one world system. That is also why every single alien invasion movie ends in the same way. It's either mankind unites against the alien threat, or mankind is convinced by the aliens to unite, because otherwise, it's always the same story. The aliens are like, you guys are getting too advanced, and the Galactic Brotherhood will not welcome you until you become one. Echo Charlie says, talk about programming, taking your kids to Disney World. It's a small, small world. Yes, look at the photo of Walt Disney hanging out with Werner von Braun. That tells you everything you need to know about the space program. Space Mountain. I mean, they can simulate space travel. They can simulate Hyperloop. I mean, they can do Hyperloop, but they can use that to simulate space travel. They can say, oh, yeah, you're actually in this Hyperloop, but you go into it. You've seen these things. I think Blue Origin, not Blue Origin, Richard Branson and then Musk, they both worked these things. And it looks like you're in a rocket, and it probably feels the same, but you wouldn't really know the difference. But if you look at Disneyland, what is it but a closed system? And there's no Warner Brothers there. Everyone's wearing the right costumes. So if you were born in Disneyland and you knew nothing outside of it, you might be convinced that Disneyland is the world, like the village. And I'm suggesting here that the Mars bases, the moon bases, these will all be closed movie sets with characters. It'd be far more likely that will have built, if they haven't already, that they will build a Mars base under China, and they will send a bunch of people there to live subterranean in a vault like the movie Fallout. It's far more likely they would do that than actually send a bunch of people out there to Mars. Of course, one, because space travel's fake, but also because the whole purpose of the space program isn't about taking us to distant destinations, even if there were such. The space program is about controlling your inner space, mind control. And this Fallout movie is about people living in a vault. And in the opening scenes, they have these walls with projectors so they can make it look like you're out there in the country. And they already have this. I mean, the technology to fake an underground Mars base and have people convinced they're on Mars, it's there. For all we know, there are people who think they're on Mars. We might already have Martians. You realize we could have like 1 million Martians right now beneath our feet? It's like InfoWars had this individual on. He said he was former CIA, and he said to Alex Jones, he's like, yeah, NASA has a secret program where they have been sending kidnapped children to a Mars colony for years, for decades. Now, NASA denied it. NASA actually came out, says here, they officially denied that they're running a child slave trafficking operation to Mars. But why would they even respond to such a claim? NASA spokesman said there's only, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so they actually have a NASA spokesman come out and he's like, asked about this rumor about a slave colony on Mars. It was Dr. Robert David Steele who died of COVID, strangely. But what he pretty much said here is that we believe that there's a colony on Mars populated by children who are kidnapped and sent into space on a 20-year ride. And once they arrive on Mars, they have no alternative but to be slaves. Now, clearly that's ridiculous. But if you remove the necessity for assuming that they're going out to Mars, yeah, I could see them shipping children to China. Yep, children may have been kidnapped and sent to a slave colony on Mars. Now, I don't think these children are kidnapped. I think these are insiders, probably knowingly putting their kids into this program. There's a pretty good movie about this called Orbiter 9. And Orbiter 9 is a science fiction about this person who's going to this exoplanet. And her parents were with her, but there's not enough oxygen for 3 passengers on the ship. So her parents leave. They basically have to abandon her. So she spent her whole life in a ship. Well, later she falls in love with the captain, who's like on Earth, talking to her through a screen. And then one day, the captain just shows up in the spaceship, comes down through the roof from a ladder, and he's like, "Come with me." Then he takes her out on a date downtown Denver, because the entire lifetime of this astronaut, she was actually in a simulation and didn't know it. And this guy felt bad for her and brought her out and took her for a night on the town. And the purpose of it was something about for mankind to be spacefaring in the case of an emergency, they need to have a lot of people already conditioned and programmed, and it's a strange story, but the thing is, the parents gave their child to the program, and it was called Orbiter 9. The suggestion being that there were lots of these ships, lots of these simulated space stations and ships that were basically full of children. Let me play this clip.
Things, and then it was disinfo against him by the pedophile rings.
Children. It goes straight into terrorizing them to adrenalize their blood. And
okay, this is Robert David Steele, former CIA, supposedly. But here's where he talks about the 20-year ride to Mars.
Body parts. Pedophilia is much
This is the original.
I believe that there is a colony on Mars that is populated by children who were kidnapped and sent into space on a 20-year ride. So that once they get to Mars, they have no alternative but to be slaves on the Mars colony.
Okay, a 20-year ride. Now, that's the part that I kind of dispute here. Because using Hyperloop and some kind of explanation about wormholes, they could probably convince people. In fact, I've seen a few different suggestions that space travel might not take that long if they could find these things in space. I think they call them celestial autobahns. But there are different sci-fi explanations that they may be able to get people to go along with. Here it is. Astronomers discover celestial autobahn, a superhighway network to travel through our solar system. Faster space travel. A novel network of manifolds has been discovered that could provide relatively short travel times for long distances in the future. So instead of taking a 20-year ride to Mars, in about 10 or 15 years, they're going to figure out how to get us there in a short amount of time. It says a spacecraft can hitch a ride on a hypothetical space-like jet stream. Now, what is the process for something like this becoming possible? It has nothing to do with science or research, although they will take a lot of your money. It is merely a matter of getting the public to accept it as a possibility. Once they can put something into the world stage and our consensus reality as real, they can fake it, and we will believe it. The strongest manifolds are near Jupiter. What it says here is, we've discovered a structure of such manifolds throughout the solar system, and the manifolds generated by Jupiter stretch to the outer border of the solar system beyond Neptune. So again, what we're talking about is this hypothetical way that we should be able to speed our transportation across the solar system. Rapid, cost efficient, and again, I think this is how they're going to convince people it's even possible. Because you're not going to be able to sell somebody on a 20-year ride to space. And they may even unsell us. Like, maybe it would be problematic if we rushed and they have to provide convincing evidence of something that doesn't exist. So I considered this. I could see them sending a starship to Mars. And a lot of people spend a lot of money because you can't spend it on Mars. So they put their life savings into it, and you fill up a starship and they send it to Mars. We're all watching, and then just like the Titanic, it gets hit by a space iceberg. A comet. We might have a space Titanic that wipes out the first major trip to Mars. And if they do that, nobody's going to want to go to Mars again for at least 100 years. Linda Kerr says they're growing aliens on Mars. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Big daycare centers on Mars. Big government daycare centers. And they're just brainwashing these children. Like, yep, the year is 2090, and your great-great-grandparents ruined Earth because they wouldn't stop their consumption of fossil fuels, so we had to leave. Like, that's what they're going to tell them. Echo Charlie says, I think there are no missing children, and they were just traumatizing us with lies. Well, if there were missing children, let's say 2015, the nonners, the QAnoners are running around, save the children, save the children. I had one of them rush up to me and say to me, don't you want to save the children? I was like, how do you answer that question? If you say yes, you're a QAnoner, and you trust the plan. If you say no, you're with the deep state and you don't care about the vampires sucking the blood from babies. So it's a question you can't really answer honestly, if you don't believe this thing. It's a culty thing to even ask. Don't you want to save the children? It's a loaded question. The point is, though, that was 2015, and I'm pretty sure those children have grown up enough. Many of them are reaching voter age. I think they're probably going to vote Democrat. So you missed your chance to save those children. Skyfish says if you fall for being frozen in deep sleep, yeah, they could do that too. They could have you take a nap and say, yeah, you've been sleeping for 20 years. Though I'm not sure they're going to fake people in mass on that level. I think they're going to lead with smaller expeditions of actors. And I think the real goal is this: they're going to perfect Mars bases, and they're all going to be communists. Space communism. Old idea. Look up the book Red Star from 1909. The Russian rocket pioneers were all about this idea that if we could just go to Mars, we could build a perfect communist base and then show those Earthlings how it's done. So the red planet goes red, and then we're like, hey, Earth needs to be red. And they want to sell us on space communism on Earth. I mean, why wouldn't you want to live on Earth as they do on Mars if they perfected it on Mars? It's a utopian scam to get you to change how you live here. One of the trademarks of, like, these utopian visions, like, this is all the utopias involve dissatisfaction with what you're doing now. You have to burn down the present to bring in this new better thing. And what they're doing now is they're trying to condition us to choose a new authoritarian life that's based on keeping everything sustainable, perfecting our, I guess, symbiotic relationship with nature so we're no longer killing Gaia. If you accept that, like I don't. I don't think we're killing Gaia. I don't think Gaia could be destroyed. In fact, I'm a climate change accelerationist. I really believe that the best approach is just to triple down on the dino juice. Just use it all up. Who cares? Because if there is anything to anthropogenic climate change, no one's going to believe it till we see evidence, and there isn't any. So let's see if we can get those ocean levels to rise up a little bit first, and that will galvanize us into a solution. But if there isn't really a problem, and we double down on everything, then we all just gain. We have the world to gain. The world's our oyster. Dewis in Paris says, I have family members who have stated they'd go to space even if it was a one-way trip. Those family members scoff at religious family members. I think my dad must have been the milkman. Now that's fascinating here because space is the new heaven, and the people who laugh at the old concept of heaven want to go to space. The people who laugh at Noah's flood or Noah's ark and the flood myth, they say that's silly. Well, guess what? They believe in Noah's flood. But it's not the bearded Noah with the dove. It's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration with a logo that happens to feature a dove. Same myth, updated for the scientific age. Space is the new heaven that atheists will believe in. Atheists don't believe in sin, but they believe in viruses. They don't believe in the devil, but they believe in COVID. Like, they are easy to manipulate because they're sheeple, just like their religious counterparts. I would even say that heliocentrism is just another Abrahamic religious faith, disguised, dressed up as science. And I say this because syncretism really explains it all. But if you look at the origin of our space religion, Nasatology, not a coincidence that future Scientology founder was there with American counterpart to Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons, and this movie star. And that right there really, I think, encapsulates what our new world religion would actually become. This idea of merging science fiction with mystery Babylon, and then the big screen, movie star idol worship. And Nasatology and Scientology are essentially the same religion, although NASA has better special effects and Scientology has better actors. But their premise is the same. Space as the new heaven, mankind's future evolution contingent upon us rising above the world. rising above the worldliness, rising above man's nature, etc. That's why we have to become aliens. Aliens are ascended. They have risen above their carbon footprints, their human passions, their divisions. Linda Curtis says NASA is the 13th mystery school. Yeah, I would say that NASA is an Egyptian mystery school. It's basically it. That is the truth. However, like all these schools, you have the exoteric and the esoteric. The people who are brainwashed by the exoteric surface level explanations believe in a literal space, and they think those rockets are vehicles to take you there. Those who are informed or initiated or enlightened about the real meaning know that space is your mind, and that space travel is a allegory for, ascending higher states of consciousness. And the obelisk has been repackaged as a rocket, and the ascent into heaven means the same thing. It's the earth god's ascent, his resurrection, and the obelisk is literally being worshipped by all these NASA fans. It's like, you're worshiping an idol, right? It's kind of funny. I mean, it's funny, not funny. But the point of it is, it's esoteric, and very few people would know. The flight director for Apollo 11 had said that back in the 60s, the simulation had become indistinguishable from the real thing. So if you're in the control room and they say they're going to space, you would have no way to know it wasn't so. So you have a lot of dupes when it comes to the space program. People say there's no way they faked the moon landing. There were too many people in the know. That many people could not keep a secret. Okay, well, why do you imagine that everybody would have to know? Like, oh, here's a janitor at NASA. Hey, man, we're faking the moon landing. Just thought you should know. No, the only people who would know would be those behind the curtain, and it would be a need to know basis. Let's see here. Dewis and Paris says NASA isn't blazing us to space. Elon is boring us to space. Yep, exactly. The Boring Company. And this is part of his connection to, I'm talking about Elon Musk, to Gene Wilder, to Willy Wonka. The tunnel that takes you to another world where you have the Oompa Loompas making candy. Well, you go to Mars through the Boring Company's tunnels, and what are you going to do on Mars? You're going to be an Oompa Loompa for Emperor Elon, Pope Elon. Mars, A Technical Tale by Werner von Braun described the Elon who colonizes Mars, and guess what? He sets up the organizational structure of the government just like the papacy. So he is quite literally the Pope on Mars. But yeah, you go to Mars and you're going to be an Oompa Loomp for Elon Musk. And he has no problem with indentured servitude. He made the point to say that if you don't have enough money to go, you can work it off. It's not like you're ever going home. Now let me also show you this, because the connection between Musk and Willy Wonka is deep, just like the connection between Musk and Iron Man is deep, or Musk and Pope Constantine. These are all aspects of this composite character. Now, Elon Musk reveals boring candy. It's peanut brittle. This is from Mashable. So just like Willy Wonka, he is deciding to get into the candy business. And around this time, Musk was literally purchasing the house of Willy Wonka, Gene Wilder. So here you have his boring candy. So you could go on this little trip to Mars through the tunnel, and Pope Elon Willy Wonka will have you as a slave there, his personal Oompa Loompa making him candy. And probably farming potatoes. I don't think you can separate that. And go through your comments. Michael R. Jewell says, do you know anything about the little season theory, Tim? No, I will take a look at that. And if you want to post a link, go ahead. And anyone who comments, I will be handing out here wrenches in just a few minutes. Sun Rabbit says, space is what you get when you remove the clutter from your home. Well, they use the word space in a very interesting way. You have to remember they started the whole safe space thing first in the universities. And that was social distancing. So they introduced social distancing as the safe space to protect lefties from right-wing views. It wasn't a safe space for conservatives on liberal campuses. It was a safe space on liberal campuses for a minority of conservative viewpoints. And I remember thinking, okay, they need a space to be protected from ideas because they don't want these ideas. And then we have 2020 come along, and now we need the physical safe space and distancing because, of course, we don't want to catch this thing. Well, then a few months later, it kind of merges where, hey, the people carrying the thing also carry the ideas that we needed the safe space from. So they turned a safe space as a voluntary thing into a mandatory thing into a now you need to voluntarily create a safe space against these thought crimes, these ideas. So they've enlarged it. I've often referred to this as the safe space age. And the safe space age will be complete when they have made the internet a safe space for those with mind aids, that is, no mental immune systems. Because they don't want people, they don't want media consumers who actually think about what they're consuming. What they need are believers, and they need to get rid of knowers who might raise questions, who might spread ideas that they don't want their believers being exposed to because they know their believers will absorb anything. Jake the A-hole says, normies have never heard of a non-disclosure agreement. They think there's no secret that can be possibly kept from them. Exactly. And look, a lot of normies are good people. And good people don't think like bad people, meaning they're kind of naive. And that's what it comes down to. Which I think is, this day and age, to be that naive about not just lying in general, people who lie and deceivers, and the rise of social media and the attendant narcissism, it's all there. But the fact that people are so trusting of media and they don't know that media and government are the same, that the government globally exists. There's one government, and media is how it mediates the mass mind. This is where it's at, says Tim. Iran is attacking Israel right now. It's 4/13/2024. End of the world's coming, what, 5 years early? Apophis isn't scheduled till April 13th, 2029. So I guess the 400 nukes are going to come out, and I didn't get my food yet from that guy. That's okay. I know where some truthers live. And you just got to go where the truthers live if you need storable food items. OJ went to Mars, says Kevin Mooring. Catching up on your comments here. Do Us in Paris says, space is feng shui then. Yes, in a way it's mental. They're mentally arranged, they're like going into your mind, and they're rearranging the architecture of your mind and creating your worldview. It always has been. Inner space, your mind space, cyberspace, they've created these ways of getting us to conceptualize the need for having a unity in our internal concept of the world. We all need to have the same, we all need to be in the same safe space. And that's why space is such a big deal. We share one space station. It's about when we rise above the world, we're all one. We don't see national boundaries. They call it the overview effect. They say astronauts who go far enough away from the Earth and they see the thing in its entirety see the world as one. Well, not all of them. They don't all get it. For example, Mark Kelly didn't get the overview effect, but Scott Kelly did. The twins. So Scott Kelly came down to Earth with a vision of one world, unity, one mankind, no boundaries, no different. He rose above us. But his brother didn't. He went into politics, became a senator. Now, when someone said that there's an attack going on right now, Israel and Iran, what all we can really say is that's what's being reported. But just because it's being LARPed right now or simulated right now doesn't mean it's happening right now. Remember, 10.7 happened right after they released Modern Warfare 3 on 10.6. These are coordinated media events, and it's designed to occur on the world stage and your internal concept of the world. But just because they're projecting it onto the collective psyche doesn't mean it's happening. We can suspend judgment until we have more facts. We don't have to wait, I mean, too long, but eventually we'll see. You got to look for cracks in the story, for rubber fake dead people. This is where it's at. Says this attack is weird. How did the media know about the attack? How did the media know about the attack? How did this individual that I was playing earlier, Matt Wallace, how did he know? He put this out there earlier today. It's like the government's downplaying it. Iran has top military preparing a strike on Israel. They have 400 weapons. Buy my food. So when I saw that, I was like, look, we need to get ahead of this and recognize that this is a marketing opportunity. They're going to be selling us a bunch of stuff, selling us on big government, and really hyping up the stage, the ramping up the emotional intensity as we get closer to the election. Like, did anybody not expect this? There's going to be escalations, obviously. Although, no matter how chaotic things get on the screen, my pulse is not going to rise. Like, I'm not agitated at all. I'm not running for my basement, my bunker. Ted Stryker says, Tim, when you put the wheels on the Penguinator, use the fan to propel him. It would be cool if he could move. Yeah, I plan to take apart a remote control car and mount him on that. And so for those who didn't know, we have a cyborg penguin I'm developing, kind of a prototype, but the final version will be much smaller. We want a desktop Penguinotti, a personal assistant, AI, all of it. But for the most part, it's going to be modeled off of our standard cyborg penguin. And if you don't know the story of the cyborg penguin, it has to do with the penguins at some point this is part of this script we have, they had accessed an Antarctican base that had been abandoned. So here they are in Antarctica searching for krill, and they get into a base and they start munching on neurotropics, smart drugs. And these things were all highly experimental. So several generations later, these penguins in this base, in and out, are constantly augmenting themselves. They're learning, they're adding parts. So they achieved what you would call the singularity, the technological singularity, where now nature is not the primary driver of their evolution. They are. Technology is. They've achieved that point. And the term singularity was coined by John von Neumann. So the idea here is what happens if penguins hit the singularity first? And the Penguinotti script is based on this. I'm not going to give you any spoilers. We're going to be producing it soon, and I'm using InVideo and a few other sites to help build the storyboard out. But in the meantime, I decided to build a prototype of this desktop personal assistant cyborg thing, and I took a plush penguin, I added some parts, and I've been building onto it on live streams. All right, let's continue. Duas in Paris says Persia conquered Babylon. The Iran script could be a redo of that. This is where it's at. Says AJ getting cremated. No pulp in the juice. Too soon. Look, I still think he's living in Megyn Kelly's basement, decked out to look like a prison cell. Because Nicole Simpson and OJ, despite all the fakery, were really in love. And they still are. And they're probably just retiring that world stage character. I have no reason to believe he's dead. 72 hours until all hell breaks loose. This was stated by Trump on Friday, and maybe it's going to come true for reasons unconnected to him. I didn't want to get too much into this. I mean, I really want to avoid digging too deep into some of these things that are just debatable at this point. Contrails or the Q stuff. Although I wanted to bring your attention to this. This Pastor Bob Joyce is believed by the QAnon crew to be Elvis Presley. And he's hanging out at Mar-a-Lago. Again, Bob Joyce. He's believed to be Elvis by QAnoners. I don't see it at all, but they buy it. just like they believe they know Marilyn Monroe is this other person. They have all these characters they follow. Anyway, Steve Simpson had said, Bob Joyce is not Elvis. Elvis would be 89. Bob Joyce is not 89. Well, JoJo here says, well, it's plastic surgery, access to the best cures, med beds, and loving the Lord. Yes, it's possible. Courtney Bedwell says med beds. Med beds. Never Surrender says med beds. Gretchen Killeen says med bed. Missy Barton says, do a dig on Bob Joyce and make up your own mind. Lots of coincidences. Emoji laughing, emoji laughing. Look, people who use a lot of emojis are, on Twitter especially, are not just annoying, but I think a lot of them just come off as kind of unhinged. Like instead of saying something, they're just emoting. And you shouldn't be that emotional. And if you're not really having those emotions, you shouldn't be using those emojis because then you're putting up a false front. Linda Goodman McLean says, yes, that's Elvis. Why would Pastor Bob Joyce be at Mar-a-Lago if he's not Elvis? Why is a small town Arkansas preacher from a small church in attendance at this huge affair if he's not Elvis? I like her line of thinking there. I would add to it. I would add to this that there's no way that he's not Elvis because he's a pastor. And why would a pastor lie? And moreover, knowing so many people think he's Elvis, he would tell them that he was Elvis if it was true. I mean, he would tell them it wasn't if it was not the case. So I think you can make the case he's Elvis. You just have to do a little mental gymnastics. And the fact that he's hanging out with Charlie Ward, yeah, obviously, that should tell you something. Now, I was only looking at this thinking about how does this work? And I figured out how it worked. How do you get people to believe in crazy stuff like this? Simple. Here's the trick. You tell them to do their own research. And instead of pointing, like, here's how I think this works with all of these truth or do your own research conspiracy theories. Instead of telling you, hey, this crazy thing is true, because they know you won't believe it, they don't tell you that. They put all the clues that would lead you to believe that out there. And they say, hey, look, do your own research. I'm not saying it's true. Do your own research. So then you go down the trail that they point out. So you're not really doing your own research. You're actually being led to think you're discovering something. This is an old marketing technique. In marketing, they know that if you can convince somebody that they are discovering something, they are more likely to accept it. Marketing in this way gets people also to think that it's their idea. And I think it was Mark Twain, easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled. Yeah, you can get them to fool themselves. And that's what locks them in. This is where it's at. Says, no more fake news for me today. I'm about to watch the UFC fight. All right. Well, thanks for the input there on the war. It's nice, though. It's like, well, look, Iran is destroying Israel. They have 400 nukes. The world could be annihilated. The atmosphere might just burn up today. But let me go ahead and watch these two men pummel the hell out of each other in this octagon. Like, looking at that, it's like, maybe we do deserve 400 nukes. No, I'm just kidding. I have no problem with UFC. I'm just saying, it's an ironic statement about our times where Armageddon's happening over here. You don't like it, you flip the channel, and you can watch this. No consequences. Everything is equally real as anything else. A celebrity wardrobe malfunction weighs as heavily on the collective psyche as a power mad dictator waving around a nuclear missile. But what I'm saying is that if you're aware of what's going on, you'll watch UFC because you know the war is fake. And you know that UFC is athletics, it's fighting. You can't, I mean, people talk about sports being rigged, but there are some things you just can't fake. And I think people naturally want to admire high performance athletes doing their best work. I mean, I have no issue with that. I really don't. Dewis in Paris says you have to get your head beat to question the shape of the earth. Yeah, isn't that interesting that all these MMA types are all flat earth? But I've noticed a pattern here too. I've noticed that many of the MMA types gravitate towards QAnon stuff as well. So they're all about the Q. And it's even with some of these boxers like that Ryan Garcia. It's all about the Q, the cannibal elite. And you know why? I mentioned this before. The right wing, toxic masculinity, it's also associated with trad right values. Trad right is all about moral panic, sin, old concept of sin, evil. These are archaic concepts. The new version is, of course, sin is now virus, and the pandemic has replaced the moral panic. But these are just examples of the schism between the sides and how the right and its comedians, its MMA, all of its influencers all spout the same viewpoints from the same perspective. This is where it's at. It says I binged watched the Fallout show and they had a flat earth joke. I'm going to try to finish up a couple episodes on that and dig deeper. I thought it was interesting. It opens up with this underground vault, exactly as I imagined the fake Mars bases will look. And everyone's wearing these blue suits with 33s on the back and the gold trim. And the character Lucy, which could be Light, Lucifer, Lucy has to go to the surface and opens the portal. There's light to the world above. There's some kind of allegory in here. You see the world of darkness, the kingdom, and then light in the heavens, the crown. This is all part of the body of symbolism that goes into a lot of this stuff. And when I say space travel is allegory for higher states of consciousness, you could correlate this with the idea of the kundalini, the serpent, the rising, and the 33 vertebrae. All this pertains to Christ dying at 33, transcending the material realm, the crown, the corona, the crown of thorns. But the idea, of course, is that from earth to the heavens, the ascension, 33 vertebrae has been associated with this idea of heaven, the crown. So you have them in the vault rising to the surface. And this is something I mentioned before with the escape velocity, Mach 33. To escape the earth, to escape the material realm, you have to go 33 times the speed of sound. That's why I say it's allegory. It has to do with, again, transcending the material plane, going into the light. I'll watch Civil War tonight. I'll put that in my notes. In fact, I'll go watch it right after this. Mango Penguin says, maybe the earth is body shaped. It chooses its shape as it sees fit. Yeah, it's chubby in the middle. That's why they say it has a oblate sphericity. Earth's out of shape. Look, I would say this. The starting point is Earth an object? Is Earth an object suspended in space? Like, I would start with that. I'm not even convinced it's a disparate object. So the conversation about shape, I think it's premature to talk about whether it's a ball, oblate, shaped like a pizza, like, because that presumes an edge. Like, what if there isn't an edge? What if we're on the bottom of an infinite universe? We're just at the very bottom of it. Then it wouldn't make sense to talk about it in terms of a shape, because the universe isn't a ball. The universe is considered to be an endless, ever-expanding flat plane, flat universe. Thank you, Matt Everywhere. The IPS appreciates the support. He says, your work and way of thinking are always refreshing for my mind. Thank you. Yeah, same here. It's mutual. I'm in the chat room, and all the researchers and all of us in the think tank and the raft. It's always thought-provoking, and I go into the gilded, and people are always bringing new ideas into the tank to be discussed, and it's nice to know that we have a network of people who aren't fooled, who aren't immersed in the illusion. And you'll notice that we're not panicking. We're not running for the hills. We're not freaking out about iodine and ivermectin and space junk helmets and all this stuff. We're very calm. And that there's a word for it. Ataraxia. It's the result of skepticism. The original skeptics, Pyrrho, the idea was suspending judgment, or epichy, suspension of judgment, would result in a peace of mind because you're not reflexively believing things that you cannot verify that are in all likelihood just rumors. If you fell for every rumor, you would be stressed out. Psychosomatically, you might even destroy yourself. And what we have here is really a peaceful state. I call this the raft. I mean, we say think tank, but they flooded this place really since 2020 with the sea of irrelevance. So now we're on a raft. We're not on a warship. It's not an aircraft carrier. It's a raft. We're just drifting along, not lazily. I mean, it's purposeful because we are assembling. But there's a peace of mind that comes along with this. The idea that, of course, that we're engaged in, I think, more of a philosophical pursuit. I would almost liken this to film criticism. Okay, let's see. Let's move on. Going through my notes, and if you're contributing on any of the platforms where we're at, whether it's Discord or even the YouTube comments, I put it all here at minds.com/Infinite Plane Society. So if you want to follow along with my notes, it's from the eclipse, solar eclipse. I'm sorry, the Express. This is a picture from. This is actually older. This is from March of 2015, but it's kind of fascinating just to look at how a lot of this stuff went under the radar. Solar eclipse image taken from the ISS that sent Twitter into a meltdown turns out to be fake. This stunning image taken from the ISS sent Twitter into meltdown. So you're looking at what looks to be a total solar eclipse as seen from the space station. Now this went viral, and it went viral because people believed it. It wasn't like, oh, this is fake, let me share it. No, it went viral because people thought it was real. It went viral because people are auto-believing fools. Well, it turns out it was fake. So why I want to just bring this up is that we have to recognize the intrinsic fakeability of reality and the fact that the believers will believe anything from their trusted sources. They don't even think about it or process it because they don't know they're being lied to. Peter Higgs, who predicted the God particle, dies at 94. And this is on the day of the eclipse. I don't know what to make of this other than it was a big CERN day. A lot of Mandela affected people were celebrating, believing new Mandela effects are nigh. I noticed he has JFK's birthday, which is interestingly the same birthday as John Hinckley, the guy that shot Reagan. O.J. Simpson was originally cast as the Terminator. The ex-NFL star turned actor had multiple roles in the Naked Gun trilogy, and he was set to play the cyborg in James Cameron's 1984 classic, according to Arnold Schwarzenegger, 76, who landed the role. Again, I don't know. 76, they're both 76. I've noticed some interesting things with that number. I need to do some more mind mapping for sure. But the connection here, don't know what to make of it, other than Arnold Schwarzenegger, I believe, was chosen to be the Terminator because he's representing like the paragon of toxic masculinity. Too much T. In fact, too much testosterone. The big guns. James Cameron said testosterone is a toxin. And his entire catalog of movies is all about the sinking of the West. From a Metascript perspective, James Cameron is conveying the message that the West needs to fall because of what it epitomizes. Let me play this clip. This is from recently. O.J. Simpson diagnosed with cancer, undergoing chemotherapy, but the 76-year-old denies the report that he is in hospice. So here he is being questioned by a social media content creator, and he says that no, he's not in the hospital.
You talking about hospice? No, I'm not in any hospital. I don't know who put that out there, but whoever put that out there, I guess is like the Donald Singh. Can't trust the media.
Can't trust the media, he says. Okay, well, we can put that rumor to sleep. Then you have the connections between the Kardashians and OJ. There may be some stuff to go into here. Wearing a Titleist golf brand cap and news of his alleged death comes on the first day of the Masters major tournament. This is where it's at. It says the Mandela strikes again. The CERN logo changed. Oh, did it? Let me take a look. Isn't it the overlapping sixes? CERN 666? Yep. Now, okay, let me bring this up too. CERN, I believe there was we were talking about the boring tunnels earlier. So it got me thinking about tunnels. And I think it's all largely basically storytelling, mind control, etc. But this is kind of interesting. At CERN, you have something called ALICE, a Large Ion Collider Experiment. So we have Alice, and of course, Alice in Wonderland is one of these repeated themes that we see in mind control. And there's this thing called the Alice boring machine, the tunnel boring machine, the type that would be used for Hyperloop is called Alice, and they say it has nothing to do with Alice in Wonderland, which I think is absurd to deny it, but the name of a designer was Alice. But I think there's a deeper meaning to this here as well. The CERN thing to me is just a ritual site. It has its exoteric explanation like NASA, but it has its esoteric, and the esoteric side of CERN is worship of the earth god. CERN, Cern Unos, the horned god, and that would explain a lot of their rituals. That would explain actually everything about them. They're worshiping the god of light. This is where it's asked, says, how much for one of those upgraded penguins? Well, once the prototype is done, I'm going to work on having it turned into a 3D printable model. I'll try to bring down the cost. And when I said it's going to be a desktop personal assistant, I have a lot of ideas for it, but this one I'm making right now with the lights on the head and the wheels and everything, I might add like a USB speaker into it as well. All right, I'm going through your comments. Sunrabbit says, if it's in the MSM media, it's a press release because someone's making money off it. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. This is where it's at. It says, YouTube recommended a new Mandela effect video to me. CERN logo hanged. Okay. Well, okay, the Mandela effect doesn't need to be debunked. It's never been bunked. Like, it's one of these Hitchens razor situations. You know, Christopher Hitchens razor, that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. They haven't really brought out any real residue. So you can just dismiss it. But I want to say the Mandela effect is real, but it's not shifting realities. It's false memories. We know this. I know how it works. We've explained it ad nauseum. But it hasn't been debunked by the mainstream. They're always like, this unexplainable phenomenon that millions of people claim, could it be CERN? They always bring it up as though it's still a question. And why is that? I think it's because they don't want us to understand how some of these psyops work. They don't want you to understand how you can be made into a false witness. The mass media is always there to program you. So they're not going to teach you how to reverse engineer how you get programmed. And the Mandela effect is a great example of how you can be programmed. It's all about getting you to take their prompts, as in their imagination prompts, and get these ideas generated in your imagination and then have them weighed as equal to things you've actually perceived. A similar example, how this works in the big picture. Predictive programming is putting ideas in your mind, narratives, images, or even the movies about fake events. People remember events based on movies they've seen. Like, these help build and bolster their belief systems. So false memories are really just imagined concepts or ideas, prompted imaginings that are filed in the same place as real memories. Let's see here. Now, who's going to be EMP'd? That's a good question. Again, thank you, Multi-C0 Dagger. IPS appreciates the support. A lot of stuff's happening right now. This month, my main objective, I'm working on a documentary. In order to test out a few things, our format, audio, video, and we are going to be doing a 90-minute documentary on the doxing of Q. I'm hiring a local cinematographer. I'm hiring an interviewer, a local journalist, to do the interview itself. And we're going to break down in a concise way, in an easily digestible format for anybody who's new to the topic, how we doxed Q. Because this is one of the biggest and most most ignored stories of the last really 7 years. This is a big deal. Q is a major player. The person who wrote the drops should already have been exposed. And it's being talked about now quite a lot. But no one can wrap their head around it. And the story itself is so multifaceted that there is no elevator pitch I could give to a documentary maker that would have them say, let me run with this story. So I'm going to do it myself. In fact, after this live stream, I'm going to work on a mind map. So you'll want to stick around. I'll send out notifications. I want to do a mind map so that I can kind of work off that when I set up the bigger script for this thing. All right, well, we're going to be back mind mapping, and I'll be pretty involved in the Discord today. We have a lot that we're going through, and cyborg penguins will probably be developed as well. But the main thing now, I'm going to be working on this mind map, so subscribe to my main channel because I'll be streaming from that video. This is Chief Crow, Auto Hoax, or GTFO. Thank you all for the support, and we'll see you all later.